Hello everyone. Today's topic: demons and the forces of chaos. Controversial and fascinating. In most mythological, religious, and fantasy systems, demons are classified as forces of chaos, but this is not a universal rule. Everything depends on the specific tradition or world being discussed. Below is a structured overview. Religious traditions: Christianity. Demons are fallen angels who rebelled against divine order. They oppose the cosmic order embodied by God. Although demons may act hierarchically, their goal is destruction, temptation, and deviation from order. Conclusion: demons are the forces of chaos, moral and spiritual. Judaism. Demonology is less developed. Some beings operate within God's plan as instruments of testing. Conclusion: not absolute chaos, but rather a controlled, destructive element. Islam. Jinn, including shaitans, possess free will. They are not embodiment of chaos as a principle, but rather morally neutral or evil beings. Conclusion: not identical to forces of chaos. Mythology and occultism. In many pagan systems, demons are natural spirits, deities of chaotic aspects of the world, or distort images of ancient gods. They are not always evil, but are often associated with unpredictability, the breaking of boundaries, and transformation. Conclusion: demons are the forces of primordial or transformational chaos. Fantasy and role-playing systems. Typical theme: order, angels, gods of light, law, chaos. Demons, abysses, dark dimensions. Demons often inhabit chaotic worlds, violate the laws of reality, act impulsively or destructively, but sometimes demons can be strictly hierarchical. Hellish legions, contracts, rules. In this case, they represent evil order rather than chaos. Conclusion: most often chaos, but sometimes the opposite of good without an element of chaos. Summary: yes, in most concepts, demons are associated with forces of chaos, but this chaos often has its own structure and rules. Imps, lesser demons. Origin and function. Imps are a figure from Christian and Slavic demonology. They are subordinate evil spirits associated with sin, temptation, and the violation of moral order. Their activity is aimed at destabilizing the individual rather than the cosmos as a whole. Nature of chaos: moral chaos, undermining norms, temptation, deceit. They do not create anything new, only destroy and parasitize, often act chaotically, but within a hellish hierarchy. Conclusion: imps are lower forces of destructive moral chaos, subordinate to evil. Comparison of Loki and demons. Origin and function. Loki is a god, or originally a Jotun, from Norse mythology. He is not a demon and not a devil, but a trickster, a figure who breaks rules, formally belongs to the world of the gods, yet constantly undermines their order. Nature of chaos. Cosmic and narrative chaos provokes crisis, triggers events that origin and function. Loki is a god. He is not a demon and not a devil, but a trickster, a figure who breaks rules, formally belongs to the world of the gods, yet constantly undermines their order. Nature of chaos. Cosmic and narrative chaos provokes crisis, triggers events that lead to change, is a key figure of Ragnarok. Loki's chaos is gravity and transformational, not merely destructive. His actions sometimes harm the gods and sometimes save them. Conclusion: Loki is personification of chaos as change, not as evil. Generalized conclusion: imps represent chaos as decay and distortion. Loki represents chaos as a distorting of order for the sake of movement and renewal. Therefore, imps are servants of evil. Loki is a force of chaos, but not a demon and not absolute evil. Next, let's consider different approaches to imps. Two different approaches to imps. Religious, Christian. Imps are absolute evil that does not maintain balance, is not the order side of energy, exists as a result of separation from good. The balance of the world is ensured by God, not by symmetry between good and evil. Psychological, esoteric, dualistic. The world exists through polarity, light, shadow, order, chaos, creation, destruction. In this system, imps are not evil but functional, fulfill the role of destroyers without which development is impossible, prevent the system from stagnation. How this works from the perspective of balance. Imagine the world as an energetic system. Without imps, order turns into stagnation, the world ossifies. With an excess of imps, structure collapses, entropy sets in. Balance is not equality, but controlled tension between the poles. Why imps are perceived as evil? Human consciousness gravitates towards stability. Forces of disintegration are painful, frightening, destructive to the familiar. Therefore, culture labels them as evil, even if functional. Therefore, next, an expert systemic comparison of demons with other forces of chaos without attachment to a single region within a generalized cosmological model. Mythology, psychology, fantasy. Key definition: chaos is not necessarily disorder. It is a principle of change, the destruction of form, the disruption of stable structures, a source of renewal or degradation, depending on control. Demons are only one type of bearer of chaos and not the most universal one. Demons as a force of chaos. Characteristic: origin, distorted order, fall, corruption, function, destruction without creation, direction of action, downward, degradation, entropy, dependence, often subordinate to a hierarchy, type of chaos. Entropic chaos destroys but does not create a new form, change, decomposition of all structures, pressure on the system, a test of resilience. Limitation: incapable of creating a new order when dominant they lead to collapse. Comparison with other forces of chaos. Tricksters. Rule: concepts like brick rules trigger events that change the course of history. Type of chaos: transformational chaos destroys so that something new can emerge. Difference from demons: a demon destroys the system, a trickster reboots it. Primordial chaos, abyss void. Rule: The source of all existence exists prior to any order. Type of chaos: precreative chaos, potential, not evil. Difference from demons: demons are product of the world. Primordial chaos is a condition of its emerge. Elemental forces: storms, fire, cataclysm. Rule: natural cleanings, balance of ecosystems. Type of chaos: natural chaos without intent. Difference from demons: demons act purposefully. Elements are amoral. Dark deities, gods of destruction. Rule: controlled destruction of cycles, a part of cosmic order. Type of chaos: regulated chaos. Difference from demons: a demon is a system malfunction. A dark god is its function. Absolute chaos, anti-cosmos. Rule: negation of being. The end of all forms. Type of chaos: nihilistic chaos. Difference from demons: demons still require the world to exist. Absolute chaos destroys the very possibility of existence. Conclusion: demons are not chaos in general, but its lowest generative form. They are necessary only in limited quantities. They do not bring renewal by themselves. True balance arises about the level of demons where chaos and order interact consciously. Next, a systemic explanation of how people reperceived and perceive demons and why these ideas differ so greatly depending on culture, era, and level of consciousness. Archaic perception, pre-Abrahamic culture. In the most ancient tradition, demons were not absolute evil. They were understood as forces of nature, chaos, transition, liminal energies. They embodied what was beyond human control: elements, instincts, death, illness, ecstasy, sexuality. A demon is a function, not an enemy. People interacted with them, negated, opposed them, invoked them for transformation. Key point: a demon is a force that does not serve humanity but can be used. Religious dualistic perception, monotheism. Here, a radical break in the image occurs. Demons become absolute evil, enemies of God, tempters, the cause of sin and the fall. The human is a victim, the demon is the aggressor. The core model: fear, prohibition, expulsion. This is simplification for necessary for controlling the masses, preserving moral order, clearly dividing good evil. Key point: the demon ceases to be a force and becomes an enemy. Psychological perception, Jung, depth psychology. In the 20th century, a new level of understanding emerged. Demons are the shadow, repressed desires, aggression, fear, trauma, unconscious energy. What is not accepted by consciousness is personified as a demon. Important: the greater the repression, the more terrifying the demon. Integration, a reduction in destructiveness. Key point: a demon is not something external, but what is acknowledged within. Esoteric perception, modern practices. In contemporary esotericism, demons return as energetic principles. They are viewed as forces of chaos, catalysts of change, archetypes of power, desire, and the destruction of the old, energies that shatter illusions. But without a mature psyche, working with them is dangerous. A demon does not teach gently. It applies pressure until there is a result. Key point: demons are not about comfort, but about truth and power. Why people fear demons? Fear arises not because of demons themselves, but because of loss of control, contact with instincts, destruction of identity, encounter with one's own shadow, collapse of moral illusions. A demon frightens only when a person does not know themselves, lacks an inner center, cannot hold boundaries. Generalization. In short, for naive consciousness, evil; for religion consciousness, an enemy; for psychologist, the shadow; for an esoteric practitioner, a force; for a mature personality, a tool of transformation. Conclusion. Demons are not a question of good or evil. They are a question of the level of consciousness of the one who encounters them. Thank you all.